The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of the Afghan mountains as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical gear one final time. His team of 8 Navy SEALs had been inserted into this hostile region under the cover of darkness, their mission classified at the highest levels. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces, was hiding in a compound nestled deep within the mountain valley. Morrison had led countless operations during his 12 years of service, but something felt different about this mission. The intelligence seemed too clean, too convenient. His instincts, honed through years of combat experience, whispered warnings that he couldn't quite shake. But orders were orders, and his team trusted him implicitly. The SEALs moved with practiced silence through the treacherous landscape, their boots finding purchase on loose rocks and narrow ledges. Each man carried specialized equipment suited for mountain warfare, from advanced climbing gear to long-range communication devices. The team included some of the most experienced operators in the Navy's Special Operations community, men who had served together through multiple deployments and shared an unbreakable bond forged in combat. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Chen, the team's communications specialist, maintained constant contact with their forward operating base while monitoring enemy radio frequencies. His equipment crackled softly with intercepted Taliban communications, most of which seemed routine. Petty Officer Second Class David Rodriguez, their explosive ordnance expert, carried enough firepower to level a small building, while Hospital Corpsman Second Class Tommy Williams ensured the team's medical readiness. As they approached the target area, Morrison called for a tactical halt. Through his high-powered binoculars, he studied the compound below. The intelligence photos had been accurate. A cluster of mud brick buildings surrounded by high walls with several vehicles parked in the courtyard. What concerned him was the lack of visible security. For a high-value target's hideout, the place seemed remarkably unguarded. Senior Chief Petty Officer Robert "Tank" Anderson, Morrison's second-in-command and closest friend, crawled up beside him. Tank had earned his nickname not just for his imposing physical presence, but for his ability to push through any obstacle. The two men had served together for over 6 years, and Tank could read Morrison's expressions like a book. "Something's not right, boss," Tank whispered, echoing Morrison's own concerns. "This feels like a setup," Morrison nodded grimly. The tactical situation reminded him of stories he'd heard from Vietnam veterans about walking into carefully prepared ambushes. But they had their orders, and turning back wasn't an option without concrete evidence of a trap. The mission had been authorized at the highest levels of command, with pressure from Washington to capture or eliminate the target. The team's sniper, Petty Officer First Class Alex Kumar, had already identified several potential overwatch positions. Kumar was renowned for his ability to make impossible shots under extreme conditions, and his Barrett M82 rifle had saved the team on numerous occasions. He pointed out various clifftop positions that could provide enemy fighters with commanding views of the valley below. As the morning progressed, the SEALs moved into their assault positions. Morrison divided his team into 2 elements. He would lead the primary assault team through the compound's main entrance, while Tank would take a smaller group around to the rear. The plan was simple and direct, relying on speed and surprise to overwhelm any defenders. Chen established their communications post in a concealed position overlooking the target area. His sophisticated radio equipment would allow him to coordinate with close air support if needed, and to maintain contact with their extraction team. The plan called for a helicopter pickup at a predetermined landing zone several kilometers away, but only after the mission was complete. Williams positioned himself to provide medical support to either assault team, carrying advanced trauma care equipment that could mean the difference between life and death for a wounded teammate. His medical training had saved countless lives during previous deployments, and his presence provided psychological comfort to the entire team. Rodriguez prepared his breaching charges, calculating the precise amount of explosive needed to create entry points without bringing down the entire structure. His expertise with demolitions had earned him recognition throughout the special operations community, and his careful calculations had never failed to achieve their intended purpose. As they prepared to initiate the assault, Morrison's unease continued to grow. The valley remained eerily quiet, with no signs of normal civilian activity that might be expected in such a remote location. Even the wildlife seemed absent, as if sensing impending danger. The wind carried no sounds of daily life, no animals, no voices, no mechanical noises that might indicate human presence. Kumar scanned the surrounding cliffs through his rifle scope, searching for any signs of enemy observation posts or defensive positions. The rocky terrain provided countless hiding places, and his training had taught him to assume that any suitable position would be occupied by hostile forces. His finger rested lightly on his rifle's trigger, ready to engage threats that might emerge. The target compound showed minimal signs of occupancy. A thin wisp of smoke rose from one of the buildings, suggesting that someone might be inside. But there were no guards visible, no defensive preparations, and no indication that the occupants expected trouble. For a high-value target sanctuary, the security arrangements seemed almost negligent. Morrison made one final equipment check, ensuring that each team member's gear was properly secured and that their communication systems were functioning correctly. The success of the mission depended not just on their individual skills, but on their ability to function as a coordinated unit under extreme stress. The intelligence briefing had emphasized the importance of capturing the target alive if possible, as he possessed valuable information about planned attacks against American forces. However, the rules of engagement were clear. If the team's safety was threatened, they were authorized to use deadly force without hesitation. As 0 hour approached, Morrison felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded combat operations. Despite his concerns about the mission, he trusted in his team's abilities and their extensive training. They had faced seemingly impossible odds before and emerged victorious through skill, determination, and unwavering mutual support. The time had come to execute their carefully planned assault. Morrison signaled to his team members, watching as they moved into their final positions with the fluid precision that marked elite special operations units. Whatever dangers awaited them in the valley below, they would face them together as brothers in arms, ready to fight and die for each other and their mission. Morrison raised his hand and gave the signal to advance. His team moved down the rocky slope with practiced stealth, using available cover to mask their approach. The compound grew larger as they descended, revealing details that hadn't been visible from their observation post. The walls showed signs of recent repair, and fresh tire tracks in the dirt suggested regular vehicle traffic. The primary assault team reached the compound's perimeter wall without incident. Rodriguez quickly placed his breaching charges on the main gate while the others provided security. The silence remained oppressive, broken only by the soft whisper of wind through the mountain peaks. Morrison's tactical instincts screamed warnings, but they had committed to the mission. Chen's voice crackled softly through their earpieces, reporting that radio intercepts continued to show normal Taliban communication patterns throughout the region. There were no urgent transmissions or alerts that might indicate the enemy was aware of their presence. The intelligence picture suggested they had achieved complete tactical surprise. Tank's team had successfully moved into position at the compound's rear entrance. Through hand signals relayed by Kumar, who maintained overwatch from an elevated position, Morrison confirmed that both assault teams were ready to execute simultaneously. The coordination was flawless, a testament to countless hours of training and operational experience. Rodriguez completed his preparations and moved clear of the blast zone. The shaped charges would create a precise breach in the gate, allowing immediate entry while minimizing structural damage to the surrounding buildings. His calculations accounted for the wall's thickness and composition, ensuring maximum effectiveness with minimal noise signature. Morrison checked his watch and prepared to give the final execute order. Intelligence estimates suggested between 3 and 8 enemy combatants inside the compound, including the high-value target. The team's superior training and equipment should provide overwhelming advantages in any firefight, but Morrison knew that combat was unpredictable, and deadly mistakes could happen in seconds. The explosion shattered the morning silence like thunder, sending chunks of masonry flying in all directions. Before the dust had settled, Morrison led his team through the breach, their weapons raised and ready. The courtyard appeared empty, but years of experience had taught them that appearances could be fatally deceiving. Tank's team simultaneously breached the rear entrance, creating a coordinated two-pronged assault that would prevent enemy fighters from escaping or organizing effective resistance. The timing was perfect, executed with the precision that distinguished elite special operations units from conventional forces. The first building showed signs of recent habitation, cooking utensils, bedding, and personal items scattered throughout the rooms, but there were no people. No signs of immediate occupancy, and no indication that anyone had been present within the past several hours. The intelligence reports had clearly been incorrect about the target's location. Morrison's unease transformed into active alarm as his team systematically cleared each building without encountering any resistance. The compound was obviously being used as a safe house, but it was currently unoccupied. More disturbing was the discovery of electronic equipment that suggested sophisticated surveillance capabilities, equipment far more advanced than typical Taliban resources. Chen's voice suddenly crackled with urgency through their communication system. He had intercepted radio transmissions indicating that enemy forces were moving into positions around the valley. The communications were coordinated and professional, suggesting a well-planned military operation rather than a spontaneous response to their assault. Kumar's sniper position provided him with the best vantage point for observing the surrounding terrain. Through his powerful scope, he began identifying armed figures moving among the rocks on the opposite cliffs. The enemy fighters were positioning themselves with tactical precision that indicated extensive training and careful preparation. The realization hit Morrison like a physical blow. They had walked into a carefully prepared ambush. The intelligence about the high-value target had been deliberately leaked to lure them into this remote valley where they could be isolated and destroyed. The compound was bait in a sophisticated trap that was now closing around them. Tank's voice came through the radio with controlled urgency. His team had discovered evidence that the compound had been deliberately prepared for their arrival. Fresh ammunition caches, improvised explosive devices, and fighting positions all indicated that someone had known they were coming and had prepared accordingly. Morrison immediately ordered his team to establish defensive positions within the compound. The thick walls would provide some protection, but they were essentially trapped in a killing zone with enemy forces controlling the high ground. Their only hope lay in their superior training, firepower, and the possibility of air support. Chen worked frantically to establish contact with their forward operating base, requesting immediate close air support and emergency extraction. But the radio waves seemed unusually cluttered with interference, suggesting that the enemy might be using electronic warfare capabilities to disrupt their communications. Rodriguez began preparing additional defensive charges, creating obstacles that would channel enemy assault forces into predetermined killing zones. His explosive expertise could help even the odds, but they were facing a numerically superior enemy force that had chosen the time and place for this confrontation. Williams established a casualty collection point in the most protected area of the compound, preparing his medical equipment for what was likely to be a desperate fight for survival. His trauma care capabilities would be essential for keeping wounded team members in the fight. Kumar maintained his overwatch position despite growing awareness that enemy marksmen were moving into counter-sniper positions. His Barrett rifle gave him significant range advantages, but he was increasingly exposed as enemy forces identified his location and began concentrating fire on his position. The first enemy shots rang out from multiple directions simultaneously, indicating coordinated fire control and professional military tactics. Bullets struck the compound walls and kicked up dust clouds as Morrison's team took cover and prepared to return fire. The ambush had been sprung with devastating effectiveness. Morrison realized that conventional tactics would not save them. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in terrain that favored their enemies. Their only advantages were superior individual training, better equipment, and the unbreakable bonds forged through years of shared combat experience. As enemy fire intensified from all directions, Morrison knew they were facing the fight of their lives. The mission had been compromised from the beginning, and now 8 of America's most elite warriors were trapped in a remote Afghan valley with minimal hope of survival. Their training had prepared them for this moment, but the odds were overwhelming. The intensity of enemy fire increased dramatically as more Taliban fighters reached their prepared positions on the surrounding cliffs. Morrison's team found themselves pinned down behind the compound's walls, unable to move without exposing themselves to devastating crossfire from multiple directions. The enemy had clearly spent considerable time preparing this ambush, with overlapping fields of fire that created an inescapable killing zone. Kumar's sniper position came under intense pressure as enemy marksmen focused their attention on eliminating the team's longest-range threat. Bullets sparked off the rocks around his concealed position, forcing him to remain motionless despite his desire to engage the visible targets. His Barrett rifle could reach any enemy position in the valley, but returning fire would immediately reveal his location to every hostile force in the area. Chen struggled to maintain communication. With their forward operating bases enemy jamming, equipment began interfering with their radio frequencies. The sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities suggested that they were facing a well-equipped and professionally trained enemy force, not the typical Taliban fighters they had expected. Someone had invested considerable resources in planning and executing this ambush. Morrison assessed their tactical situation with growing concern. The compound provided limited cover, and their ammunition supplies, while substantial, would not last indefinitely against sustained enemy fire. More critically, they had no clear route for withdrawal as enemy forces controlled all the high ground surrounding the valley. Tank's voice crackled through the radio from his position at the compound's rear. His team had identified at least 15 enemy fighters moving down the back slope, armed with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. The enemy was preparing for a coordinated assault that would overwhelm their defensive positions through sheer numbers, and firepower. Rodriguez worked quickly to emplace additional defensive charges around the compound's perimeter. His improvised explosive devices could disrupt enemy assault formations, but he was running low on materials and couldn't cover all possible approach routes. The enemy's numerical superiority meant they could attack from multiple directions simultaneously. Williams moved between defensive positions, checking on each team member's condition and readiness for extended combat. His medical supplies were adequate for treating moderate wounds, but serious injuries in their current situation could quickly become fatal without immediate evacuation capabilities. The enemy fire pattern revealed sophisticated tactical coordination. Instead of random shooting, the Taliban fighters were employing suppressive fire techniques designed to pin down specific positions, while other elements maneuvered for better attack angles. This level of tactical expertise was unusual for insurgent forces and suggested possible foreign training or advisors. Morrison realized that their only hope lay in breaking the enemy's tactical advantage through aggressive action. Remaining in defensive positions would only delay their inevitable defeat, as ammunition ran low and enemy forces consolidated their positions. He began formulating a desperate plan that would require splitting his already small force. Kumar's patience finally paid off when an enemy sniper revealed his position while engaging one of the assault teams. The Barrett rifle's distinctive crack echoed across the valley as Kumar's shot found its mark, eliminating a significant threat and momentarily disrupting enemy fire patterns. But his muzzle flash had also revealed his location to every hostile force in the area. Immediate return fire from multiple enemy positions forced Kumar to abandon his carefully prepared sniper nest. He moved quickly along the cliff face, using his intimate knowledge of mountain warfare techniques to find alternative firing positions while avoiding the concentrated enemy response to his previous location. Chen finally managed to establish intermittent radio contact with their forward operating base, but the news was not encouraging. Close air support was at least 30 minutes away due to weather conditions and aircraft availability. Emergency extraction helicopters were being prepared, but they could not approach the valley while it remained under enemy control. The Taliban fighters began their coordinated assault with covering fire from the clifftop positions. Morrison watched enemy forces advancing down multiple approach routes, moving with tactical discipline that confirmed his assessment of their professional training. This was not a spontaneous attack, but a carefully orchestrated military operation. Tank's defensive position came under direct assault as enemy fighters reached the compound's rear wall. The distinctive sound of rocket-propelled grenades being fired echoed across the valley, followed by massive explosions that shook the entire structure. Shrapnel and debris filled the air as the enemy attempted to breach their defensive perimeter. Rodriguez's defensive charges detonated in sequence as enemy forces triggered his carefully placed sensors. The explosions disrupted the assault formations and eliminated several attackers, but the enemy quickly adapted their tactics and found alternative approach routes that avoided his remaining defensive positions. Morrison made the difficult decision to abandon the compound's interior and establish new defensive positions in the rubble created by the enemy bombardment. The partially destroyed buildings actually provided better concealment and protection than the intact structures, while also creating obstacles that would channel enemy assault forces into prepared killing zones. Williams established a new casualty collection point in what had been the compound's main building, now partially collapsed but offering protection from indirect fire. His medical equipment had been scattered by the explosions, but he quickly gathered essential supplies and prepared to treat the wounds that would inevitably result from close-quarters combat. Kumar found a new sniper position among the rocks above the compound, providing him with clear fields of fire across multiple enemy approach routes. His elevated position was more exposed but offered better tactical advantages for supporting his teammates during the final phase of the battle. The enemy assault reached the compound's outer perimeter as Taliban fighters climbed over the partially destroyed walls. Morrison's team engaged them at close range with devastating effectiveness, their superior marksmanship and tactical training becoming decisive factors in the confined space. But for every enemy fighter they eliminated, two more seemed to take his place. Tank's voice came through the radio with news that chilled Morrison to the bone. Through his binoculars, he had identified what appeared to be foreign military advisors directing the Taliban assault. These men wore different uniforms and carried advanced communication equipment, suggesting that a professional military force was coordinating the attack against them. The realization that they were facing foreign special operations forces changed everything. This was not simply an insurgent ambush, but a carefully planned military operation designed to eliminate American special operations capabilities. Someone wanted them dead badly enough to risk international exposure by deploying professional military units. As the enemy assault intensified and ammunition supplies dwindled, Morrison knew they were approaching the final moments of their desperate fight for survival. 8 Navy SEALs against overwhelming odds in terrain that favored their enemies. The situation seemed hopeless, but they would continue fighting until the very end. The battle had raged for over 2 hours, and Morrison's team was running critically low on ammunition. Each SEAL had started the mission with a standard combat load, but the intensity of the firefight had consumed their supplies at an alarming rate. Enemy forces seemed to have unlimited reinforcements, with fresh fighters continuously arriving to replace those eliminated by the SEAL. Team's accurate fire. Tank's position at the rear of the compound had become untenable, as enemy forces concentrated their assault on his sector. A rocket-propelled grenade had partially collapsed the wall he was using for cover, and shrapnel had wounded him in the shoulder and leg. Despite his injuries, he continued to fight with characteristic determination, his rifle fire keeping multiple enemy fighters at bay. Williams crawled through the rubble to reach Tank's position, dragging his medical supplies through intense enemy fire. The short journey across the compound's courtyard became a nightmare of bullets striking the ground around him, but his dedication to his teammates overrode personal safety concerns. Tank's wounds were serious but not immediately life-threatening if properly treated. Kumar's elevated sniper position had become a primary target for enemy counter-sniper efforts. Multiple Taliban marksmen were attempting to eliminate him through coordinated fire, forcing him to constantly relocate and limiting his ability to provide effective support to his teammates below. His Barrett rifle had accounted for at least 12 enemy fighters, but the odds continued to worsen. Rodriguez had exhausted his supply of prepared explosive charges and was now using improvised devices created from available materials. His explosive expertise allowed him to create effective defensive barriers from damaged equipment and debris, but these improvisations were less reliable than his professionally manufactured charges. Chen's communication equipment had been damaged by enemy fire, leaving the team with only short-range radio contact between team members. Their connection to higher headquarters was completely severed, eliminating any possibility of coordinated rescue efforts or close air support. They were truly alone in the hostile valley. Morrison realized that conventional defensive tactics would not save them. The enemy's numerical superiority and control of the high ground created an impossible situation that would only worsen as time passed. His ammunition was down to 3 magazines, and he could see that his teammates were in similar desperate circumstances. The foreign military advisors Tank had identified were clearly coordinating the enemy assault with professional expertise. Morrison could observe their sophisticated communication equipment and tactical positioning through brief glimpses during lulls in the fighting. These were not insurgent fighters, but trained special operations personnel from an unknown nation. A devastating rocket attack struck the main building where Williams had established his casualty collection point. The explosion buried much of his medical equipment under tons of rubble and debris, severely limiting his ability to treat wounded team members. Williams himself suffered multiple cuts from flying. Glass and stone fragments. Kumar made the dangerous decision to relocate to an even more exposed position that would provide better fields of fire across the entire battlefield. His movement across the cliff face drew immediate enemy attention, but his knowledge of mountain climbing techniques allowed him to reach the new position despite concentrated hostile fire. Enemy forces had managed to establish a foothold within the compound's perimeter, creating a deadly crossfire situation that trapped the SEALs in an increasingly small defensive area. Morrison ordered his team to fall back to their final defensive position around the main building's ruins, consolidating their remaining firepower for a last stand. Tank's wounds were affecting his ability to fight effectively, but he refused Williams' suggestions to seek better cover. His rifle fire had become less accurate due to blood loss and shock, but his psychological impact on enemy morale remained significant. The Taliban fighters had learned to fear his position and approached it with extreme caution. Rodriguez created one final defensive surprise by rigging the compound's fuel storage area with improvised incendiary devices. When enemy forces inevitably reached that position, the resulting explosion would eliminate multiple attackers while creating a smoke screen that might provide limited concealment for his teammates. Chen worked desperately to repair his damaged communication equipment, using spare parts cannibalized from other devices. Without radio contact, they had no way to coordinate with potential rescue forces or provide intelligence about enemy positions and capabilities. The electronic warfare jamming continued to disrupt their frequencies. Morrison's tactical assessment painted a grim picture. His team had fought magnificently against overwhelming odds, but their ammunition was nearly exhausted. Several team members were wounded, and enemy forces continued to arrive in seemingly unlimited numbers. They had perhaps 20 minutes of effective combat capability remaining. Kumar's new sniper position provided him with clear observation of the entire valley, revealing the true scope of the enemy force arrayed against them. He counted at least 50 Taliban fighters in various positions, supported by the foreign military advisors and equipped with heavy weapons including mortars and additional rocket-propelled grenades. The sound of approaching helicopters briefly raised hopes for rescue, but the aircraft passed overhead without acknowledging their position. The flight path suggested a routine patrol rather than a rescue mission, and the helicopters disappeared beyond the mountain peaks without providing any assistance to the trapped SEALs. Williams had managed to treat Tank's wounds with his remaining medical supplies, but several other team members now showed signs of injury from the prolonged battle. Fatigue was becoming a significant factor as adrenaline levels dropped, and the physical demands of extended combat took their toll on even these elite warriors. Enemy forces began their final assault with overwhelming firepower from all directions simultaneously. Morrison knew that this coordinated attack would overwhelm their remaining defensive capabilities within minutes. His team had fought with exceptional courage and skill, but the tactical situation had become hopeless. As enemy fighters advanced through the compound's ruins, Morrison prepared for hand-to-hand combat that would mark the final phase of their desperate battle. Each SEAL checked his sidearm and fixed his bayonet, ready to fight to the death rather than surrender to forces that would undoubtedly torture and execute them. The situation appeared completely hopeless when Kumar's voice suddenly crackled through the radio with news that would change everything. Through his sniper scope, he had observed something impossible: a lone figure moving among the rocks on the distant cliff face, someone who clearly was not part of the enemy force. Kumar's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and hope as he reported the mysterious figure's presence. Through his powerful scope, he could observe someone moving with exceptional stealth among the clifftop positions occupied by enemy fighters. The individual's movement patterns and equipment suggested advanced military training, but their identity and intentions remained completely unknown. Morrison felt a surge of desperate hope mixed with caution. The appearance of any unknown factor in their tactical situation could represent either salvation or additional threat. His experience had taught him that unexpected developments in combat usually brought more problems rather than solutions, but their current circumstances left little room for pessimism. The mysterious figure appeared to be conducting reconnaissance of enemy positions rather than participating in the assault against the SEALs. Kumar observed through his scope as the individual moved systematically from position to position, remaining undetected by the Taliban fighters who were focused on their attack against the compound below. Tank's condition was deteriorating despite Williams' medical treatment. Blood loss and shock were affecting his combat effectiveness, but his warrior spirit remained undiminished. He continued to engage enemy targets with methodical precision, each shot carefully aimed to maximize the impact of his dwindling ammunition supply. Enemy forces had penetrated the compound's inner perimeter and were advancing through the rubble-strewn courtyard. Morrison's team fell back to their final defensive positions around the main building's ruins, creating interlocking fields of fire that would extract maximum casualties from the approaching Taliban fighters. Rodriguez triggered his fuel storage incendiary device as enemy forces reached the designated position. The massive explosion created a fireball that eliminated several attackers while generating thick black smoke that temporarily obscured enemy observation of the SEAL positions. The smoke provided brief respite but would dissipate quickly in the mountain wind. Chen's desperate efforts to repair his communication equipment finally achieved limited success. He managed to establish weak contact with their forward operating base, transmitting their coordinates and urgent requests for immediate close air support. The response confirmed that rescue helicopters were en route, but remained at least 15 minutes away. Williams moved between defensive positions despite the intense enemy fire, providing medical treatment to wounded team members while simultaneously engaging hostile forces with his carbine. His medical training had saved countless lives, but their current tactical situation left little opportunity for proper trauma care. Kumar maintained his overwatch position despite increasing enemy awareness of his location. Multiple Taliban snipers were now actively hunting him, forcing constant relocation while limiting his ability to provide effective fire support to his teammates below. His Barrett rifle remained their most effective long-range weapon. The foreign military advisors Morrison had observed were now actively directing the final assault phase. Their sophisticated coordination and professional tactics transformed the Taliban fighters from an undisciplined mob into an effective military force. The advisors' presence confirmed that this ambush represented more than simple insurgent activity. Morrison's ammunition situation had become critical, with only 2 magazines remaining for his primary weapon. His teammates faced similar shortages, and their sidearms would provide limited effectiveness against the automatic weapons carried by advancing enemy forces. The mathematical equation of combat was turning decisively against them. Kumar suddenly reported intensive activity around the mysterious figure's position. Through his scope, he observed what appeared to be systematic elimination of enemy fighters in the clifftop positions. The unknown individual was engaging Taliban forces with exceptional precision and effectiveness, though Kumar could not determine the exact methods being employed. The sound of distant gunfire began echoing from the cliff positions, distinct from the battle raging around the compound. Enemy fighters in elevated positions started abandoning their posts or calling for reinforcements, suggesting that they were under attack from an unexpected direction. The tactical situation was shifting in ways that no one had anticipated. Morrison ordered his team to prepare for a coordinated breakout attempt, taking advantage of the confusion in enemy ranks. The mysterious figure's intervention, whatever its nature, had created an opportunity that might not last long. Their survival depended on exploiting every tactical advantage, regardless of its source or reliability. Tank struggled to his feet despite his wounds, determined to participate in any breakout attempt rather than slow down his teammates. His rifle felt heavy in his weakened hands, but his resolve remained unshaken. The brotherhood forged through years of shared combat meant that no SEAL would be left behind, regardless of personal cost. Rodriguez prepared his remaining explosive devices for use during the breakout attempt. His charges could create additional confusion in enemy ranks while providing cover for their movement. The improvised nature of his remaining equipment made precise timing critical for maximum effectiveness. Chen transmitted their breakout plan to the approaching rescue helicopters, providing updated coordinates and requesting close air support during their movement to the extraction point. The weak radio signal made communication difficult, but essential information was getting through to their rescue coordinators. Williams gathered his remaining medical supplies and prepared to move wounded team members during the breakout attempt. Tank's condition made rapid movement difficult, but Williams had devised a plan to provide mobility support while maintaining his ability to return enemy fire when necessary. Kumar began systematically engaging enemy forces in the compound area, providing suppressive fire that would cover his teammates' movement. His elevated position offered excellent fields of fire, but it also made him extremely vulnerable to the concentrated enemy response that would inevitably follow. The mysterious figure's activities were causing visible panic among enemy forces in the cliff positions. Taliban fighters were abandoning their carefully prepared positions and falling back toward the valley floor, creating gaps in their previously impenetrable perimeter. The systematic nature of this disruption suggested professional military capabilities. Morrison realized that their window of opportunity was rapidly opening. The combination of the unknown individual's intervention, approaching air support, and enemy confusion created their first realistic chance for survival since the ambush began. The timing would be critical, as tactical advantages in combat typically lasted only minutes before enemy forces adapted. Enemy forces in the compound area seemed unaware of the disruption occurring in their rear positions. The Taliban fighters continued their assault against the SEAL positions with undiminished intensity, apparently unaware that their supporting elements on the cliffs were being systematically eliminated by an unknown force. As Morrison prepared to give the execute order for their breakout attempt, Kumar's voice crackled through the radio with the most astonishing news yet. The mysterious figure had finally revealed himself clearly enough for identification through the powerful scope, and his identity would change everything about their understanding of the day's events. Kumar's voice carried absolute astonishment as he transmitted the impossible identification. The mysterious figure was Sergeant Major Michael "Ghost" Patterson, a legendary Army Special Forces operator who had been declared killed in action 6 months earlier during a classified mission in the same region. Patterson was supposed to be dead, yet he was systematically eliminating enemy positions with the same lethal precision that had made him famous. Throughout the special operations community, Morrison felt his world shift as he processed this revelation. Patterson had been his mentor during advanced sniper training years earlier, a man whose reputation for impossible shots and miraculous survival had become legendary among special operations forces. If Patterson was alive and operating in this valley, his presence transformed their desperate situation entirely. Ghost Patterson had earned his nickname through an uncanny ability to appear and disappear in combat situations, striking enemy forces with devastating effectiveness before vanishing without trace. His confirmed death 6 months ago had shocked the entire special operations community, as he had seemed virtually indestructible despite decades of dangerous missions. Tank's condition improved dramatically when he learned of Patterson's presence. The psychological impact of knowing that one of the most skilled warriors in military history was fighting alongside them provided strength that transcended his physical wounds. Patterson had saved Tank's life during a previous deployment, creating a personal bond that went beyond professional respect. Kumar watched through his scope as Patterson moved with supernatural stealth among the cliff positions, eliminating enemy fighters with a combination of precision marksmanship and close-quarters combat techniques. His methods were silent and efficient, leaving no trace of his presence except the gradually decreasing number of enemy positions providing supporting fire. Enemy forces were beginning to realize that something catastrophic was happening to their rear positions. Taliban commanders started redirecting fighters from the compound assault to investigate the mysterious elimination of their clifftop positions. This redeployment created the tactical opening that Morrison's team desperately needed. Patterson's intervention was not random, but carefully coordinated to create maximum advantage for the trapped SEALs. His systematic elimination of enemy positions followed a precise pattern designed to collapse the ambush formation from its strongest points. His tactical expertise was creating opportunities that had not existed moments earlier. Morrison immediately modified his breakout plan to take advantage of Patterson's activities. Instead of attempting a desperate frontal assault, his team could now exploit the gaps being created in enemy lines. The coordination required would demand perfect timing, but Patterson's presence made success possible rather than merely theoretical. Chen finally established reliable communication with the approaching rescue helicopters, providing updated tactical information that included Patterson's activities. The helicopter crews were astounded to learn of his presence, as his death had been confirmed through multiple intelligence sources. His survival and continued operations raised questions that would have to be answered later. Williams prepared for rapid movement during the breakout attempt, knowing that Patterson's intervention had created their best chance for survival. Tank's wounds remained serious, but the psychological boost of Patterson's presence had improved his mobility significantly. Williams had served with Patterson on previous deployments and trusted his tactical judgment completely. Rodriguez positioned his remaining explosive devices to support the modified breakout plan. Patterson's systematic elimination of enemy positions was creating a corridor of opportunity, but it would require careful coordination to avoid interfering with his activities. The timing would be critical for maximum effectiveness. Kumar maintained his overwatch position while carefully observing Patterson's movements through his scope. The legendary operator's techniques were textbook perfect, demonstrating the skills that had made him famous throughout the military. His ability to remain undetected while systematically eliminating enemy positions defied conventional understanding of battlefield dynamics. The foreign military advisors coordinating the Taliban assault were beginning to recognize that their carefully planned ambush was collapsing. Their sophisticated communication equipment crackled with urgent transmissions as they attempted to understand how their elevated positions were being compromised. The professional nature of their response confirmed Morrison's assessment of their training and capabilities. Patterson's activities were creating a cascading failure in the enemy's tactical formation. As each clifftop position fell silent, the remaining enemy forces lost critical observation and fire support capabilities. The overlapping fields of fire that had trapped the SEALs were systematically being eliminated by someone who understood their tactical significance perfectly. Morrison recognized Patterson's tactical signature in the pattern of enemy position elimination. The legendary operator was not randomly engaging targets but following a precise plan designed to collapse the entire ambush formation. His understanding of mountain warfare tactics was being applied with devastating effectiveness against forces who had believed their positions were impregnable. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder as rescue forces closed on their position. Chen's communication with the flight crews confirmed that close air support was finally available. But Patterson's activities had already begun shifting the tactical balance. The combination of his intervention and approaching air support created their first realistic chance for survival. Tank forced himself to stand despite his wounds, determined to participate in the breakout attempt. Patterson had saved his life during a previous mission, and Tank would not let his mentor down by failing to fight when escape became possible. His rifle felt steady in his hands as adrenaline overcame the effects of blood loss and fatigue. Enemy forces in the compound area remained largely unaware of the systematic destruction of their supporting positions. The Taliban fighters continued their assault with undiminished intensity, apparently believing that victory was within reach. Their ignorance of Patterson's activities would soon prove tactically fatal. Williams gathered his remaining medical supplies and prepared to move wounded team members during the breakout. Patterson's presence had transformed their desperate situation into a manageable tactical problem, but they would still need to move quickly and efficiently to reach the extraction point safely. Rodriguez armed his final explosive devices, timing their use to support the coordinated breakout attempt. Patterson's systematic elimination of enemy positions was creating opportunities, but they would still need to fight their way through significant opposition to reach safety. Kumar began providing suppressive fire against enemy positions in the compound area, coordinating his efforts with Patterson's activities through careful observation of the tactical situation. The two snipers had never worked together directly, but their professional understanding of battlefield dynamics allowed seamless coordination without direct communication. Patterson's elimination of the final clifftop position marked the complete collapse of the enemy's elevated fire support. The Taliban forces in the compound area suddenly found themselves without the observation and covering fire that had made their assault possible. The tactical situation had reversed completely within minutes. Morrison gave the execute order for their breakout attempt, knowing that Patterson's intervention had created their window of opportunity. The 8 SEALs moved as a coordinated unit through the compound's ruins, fighting their way toward the extraction point with renewed hope and determination. The legendary Ghost Patterson had returned from the dead to save his brothers in arms, transforming certain defeat into possible victory through skills and determination that defined the very best of America's Special Operations Forces. The impossible had become reality in the mountains of Afghanistan. The breakout attempt unfolded with precision that reflected years of training and the psychological boost provided by Patterson's miraculous intervention. Morrison led his team through the compound's ruins, while Patterson continued eliminating enemy positions from his concealed locations in the cliffs. The coordination between ground and elevated forces was flawless, despite the absence of direct communication. Tank moved with determination that transcended his physical wounds, his rifle accounting for multiple enemy fighters as the team fought their way toward the extraction point. Williams provided medical support while maintaining effective fire against pursuing Taliban forces, his dual responsibilities handled with characteristic professionalism. Rodriguez's explosive devices detonated in sequence as enemy forces attempted to pursue the escaping SEALs. The carefully timed explosions created chaos in Taliban ranks, while providing additional cover for the team's movement. His expertise with demolitions had once again proved decisive in creating tactical advantages. Chen maintained communication with the rescue helicopters while moving with his teammates, providing updated coordinates and tactical information that allowed the flight crews to coordinate their approach. The radio contact was weak but sufficient for essential coordination between ground and air elements. Kumar provided covering fire from his elevated position, engaging enemy forces that attempted to interfere with the breakout attempt. His Barrett rifle eliminated several Taliban fighters who tried to establish new blocking positions, while Patterson's continued activities prevented enemy reinforcements from reaching effective positions. The foreign military advisors attempted to rally their Taliban forces and restore tactical control over the deteriorating situation. Their professional expertise was evident in their efforts to establish new defensive lines. But Patterson's systematic elimination of key positions had created too many gaps for effective reorganization. Patterson emerged from concealment long enough for Morrison to observe him directly through binoculars. The legendary operator appeared exactly as Morrison remembered him, moving with the same fluid grace and tactical precision that had made him famous. His survival and presence in this remote valley raised questions that would require answers, but those concerns could wait until everyone was safely extracted. The sound of rescue helicopters grew louder as the flight approached the designated extraction point. Close air support aircraft were also en route, providing firepower that would suppress any remaining enemy resistance. The combination of Patterson's intervention and approaching air support had transformed their desperate situation into a manageable tactical problem. Enemy forces were beginning to withdraw from their positions as the scope of their tactical failure became apparent. The carefully planned ambush had collapsed completely, with significant casualties among Taliban fighters and the foreign advisors who had coordinated the operation. Patterson's intervention had turned certain victory into devastating defeat. Morrison's team reached the extraction point as the rescue helicopters descended through the mountain passes. The landing zone was secure thanks to Patterson's elimination of the enemy positions that had commanded the area. The helicopter crews worked quickly to load wounded team members while maintaining security against possible counterattacks. Tank was loaded onto the first helicopter despite his protests that he could continue fighting. Williams accompanied him to provide medical care during the flight, while Morrison ensured that all team members were accounted for before allowing his own evacuation. The mission had failed in its original objectives, but all 8 SEALs were alive. Patterson appeared at the landing zone just as the final helicopter prepared to depart. Morrison insisted that his former mentor join them for extraction, but Patterson declined with the same quiet determination that had always characterized his approach to military service. He had his own mission to complete in these mountains. The legendary operator provided Morrison with a brief explanation of his survival and continued operations. His death had been staged to allow him to pursue a classified mission against the foreign military forces operating in the region. His presence during the ambush had been coincidental, but his intervention had been motivated by the same loyalty to fellow warriors that defined the Special Operations Community. Chen established full communication with higher headquarters as the helicopters climbed away from the valley. Initial reports confirmed that the ambush had been coordinated by foreign Special Operations forces, validating Morrison's tactical assessment. Patterson's intelligence gathering had identified the enemy network, responsible for multiple attacks against coalition forces. Kumar maintained overwatch until the helicopters were safely clear of the valley, then followed Patterson's directions to a concealed extraction point where he would continue supporting the classified mission. His sniper skills were essential for the intelligence gathering operations that Patterson was conducting. Rodriguez and Williams were evacuated with the main group, their wounds requiring medical attention that was not available in the field. Their explosive and medical expertise had proved decisive during the desperate fight, and their recovery would be essential for future operations. The rescue helicopters reached friendly airspace without further incident, carrying 8 Navy SEALs who had survived an impossible situation through skill, determination, and the miraculous intervention of a legendary warrior. Their ordeal had ended, but the larger mission that Patterson was conducting would continue in the shadows. Morrison looked back at the valley as they flew toward safety, knowing that Patterson remained behind to complete his classified mission. The legendary Ghost would continue operating in the mountains, gathering intelligence and eliminating threats with the same deadly precision that had saved 8 Navy SEALs from certain death. The debriefing would reveal the full scope of the foreign military involvement in Taliban operations, leading to strategic changes in coalition tactics and intelligence gathering. Patterson's sacrifice in maintaining his cover would contribute to saving countless lives in future operations. Years later, Morrison would learn that Patterson's mission had successfully eliminated the foreign special operations network operating in the region. The legendary warrior had completed his objectives and disappeared once again, leaving behind only the memory of his intervention and the lives he had saved through his courage and skill. The Ghost had proven once again that death itself could not stop America's most dedicated warriors from protecting their brothers in arms.